You wield the devil's power. I will destroy you.
Zafina Scarecrow Stance is a well-rounded stance. It has more versatility than her other stances, and because of this, I consider it to be her primary stance. Fast and diversified poking options attacking at every hit level. Plus on block moves and string enders allow you to effectively keep up your attack pressure on your opponent. High crushing homing move. 50-50 mix-up string starters which can be confusing to your opponents. Multiple natural launchers to start up your combos. An arsenal of moves with good counter hit properties. And an I-14 frame mid launching power crush to make your opponent think not twice but 3 times about pressuring you. Of course, this stance does have weaknesses as well. For one, she has less mobility in her Scarecrow stance. Most of her moves are either linear or track only to one side in her Scarecrow stance. This is worsened by the fact that her only homing move is slow starting at I-28 and is very punishable on block at -23. Last and probably the biggest weakness in her Scarecrow stance is the simple fact that she cannot block in Scarecrow stance. So despite all of the strengths we talked about earlier, as you can see, this stance does have quite a few weaknesses as well. We're going to get into all of this and break all of this down in this Tekken 7-Zafina Scarecrow Stance guide. Let's get started. Let's get into some basic properties of Zafina Scarecrow Stance. Now you can enter her stance manually with 3+4. You can also cancel her stance manually with down back. You can also cancel her stance if you tap and hold up for like a split second. My problem with that is if you just tap up, you will sidestep as you see here. And I just think you should just cancel her stance with down back so that you don't have the wrong action in terms of canceling versus sidestepping. Now showing you here, her stance does have mobility, and I think that's a very good thing. Some stances in the game are stationary, and if your stance has mobility, I do believe it adds a little bit more to your character's offense and defense potential and possibilities. If you're really good with movement and things like that, even though this stance doesn't have the fastest movement or anything like that, but if you're really good with movement, you could cause your opponent to whiff a move, and of course this in turn gives you the ability to get a whiff punishment. That's very, very good. That's very strong. So her movement in her stance isn't the best, but it being mobile is a good thing. This next part is actually really important. When you're playing Zafina or you're playing against Zafina, you guys have to be aware of when she's in Scarecrow Stance and she does a move or a string coming out of Scarecrow Stance, you need to be aware if she returns back to her regular standing state or if she returns back to her new state of being in Scarecrow Stance, or if her move returns her back to Scarecrow Stance, because she has very different fundamental properties between the two. If Zafina does a move that's -2 on block in her Scarecrow Stance, she can't block in her Scarecrow Stance. So it's not the same as doing -2 on block and returning back to her standing neutral state where she can block. That's a huge difference, okay? And I'm not saying Zafina's stance is weak because of this. That is definitely a weakness, but overall I do think her stance is very strong and very well balanced. Even if you do a move that's like -2 or -3 on block that returns you to Scarecrow and you manually canceled Scarecrow with down back, you still won't cancel fast enough to block the next attack. So again, keep that in mind. Now there are some moves to have a pre-built-in cancel if you press back after inputting the move, whether this move is coming out of Scarecrow and returning you back to Scarecrow, or you're doing a move out of neutral that takes you into Scarecrow. There are moves that have the back input right afterwards that will cancel, and in some cases the frames will stay the exact same whether you canceled the move from going into Scarecrow or you didn't cancel the move and you did go into Scarecrow, and in some cases the frames are actually pretty different if you cancel the move. So know your character. Basically that's really what it comes down to. Know your character. One last thing I'm going to show in the properties here is that you can actually press down 3+4 and this will cancel Scarecrow into Mantis Stance. SCR 1 is the fastest attack coming out of Scarecrow Stance, and for all intent and purposes is pretty much identical to a standard jab coming out of neutral for most characters in the game. It's not 100% the same. There are some differences. For one, it's -2 on block, where most characters' jabs are +1 on block. 2 and 3, I guess, you are coming out of a stance and you are returning to a stance. Those are some core fundamental differences there. But just like a regular jab, it is I-10, really good plus frames on hit at +9. The move is very linear, just like a regular jab, so you can easily step this to both sides. And again, just like a regular jab, this is a high. So if you read this, you can duck and punish this move. What I like most about this move, honestly, is the fact that it comes out in I-10. It's a 10 frame move, and I think that's a really strong benefit to have in a stance, especially your core stance, to have a move that comes out in 10 frames. I'm basically showing a list of characters here and showing their fastest move out of their stance. None of these characters have a 10 frame move. That's not to say that these stances are bad or anything like that. A lot of these stances are actually really good. They have a lot of built-in defensive properties like Leo's sway back to cause a whiff and getting right you tech crouches. But my point still stands. Having a move that comes out in 10 frames to check your opponent from your stance is a very, very solid benefit to your stance. SCR2 is a fairly fast mid poke that comes out at I-14. It has very respectable frames on hit at +7. This move to me always looks like it has crush properties. She kind of like ducks under, so I always feel like she has some type of evading properties, but I've never been able to evade or crush anything with this move ever. So if you guys have ever been able to, please let me know in the comments. On block, it is -7. It does return back to Scarecrow. Now, what I love most about this move is that this move is a mid 14 frame counter hit launcher, and I just think that's awesome, especially because this stance has a decent amount of moves with plus frames on them, so you can catch some trigger happy opponents with this. SCR2 does have a little bit of tracking to the left, but you can easily step it to the right as well as sidewalk it to the right. SCR2 does have an extension, SCR22, so a mid string. This does not return you back to Scarecrow stance, it returns you back to your normal standing neutral state. This is unsafe on block, however, but only at -10, so honestly not too bad. It is a natural combo, so the entire thing is guaranteed if you get the first hit, which is very good. And it is +8 on hit and it forces crouch, so very, very good frames on hit. And if you land the second hit on counter hit, you get a hard knockdown, and in most cases back 3 is guaranteed. Of course, there are mental mind games here where your opponent could do SCR2 versus doing SCR22, but if you block the first attack and your opponent does complete the string, SCR22, this string doesn't have a big enough gap for you to attack in between the string, and your opponent cannot delay this string. However, it is a big enough gap that if you have a character that has a parry or reversal, you can block the first attack and then parry or reverse the next attack. And if you have good movement skills, you can block the first attack, step to the right like SCR2, and punish your opponent. And you can sidewalk the entire string to the right. This entire string is weak to the right. SCR 1+2 is probably my favorite move coming out of Scarecrow. I think it just has really good frames and properties all around. It's I-17, it's a mid, it's +6 on block. Very, very advantageous on block. For a point of reference, Brian's back 1 is 20 frames and is +4 on block. Law's forward 1+2 is 20 frames and is +3 on block, and it also forces crouch. Paul's forward 1+2 is 20 frames and +3 on block and forces crouch, so pretty much identical to Law. Now, all three of these moves are coming out of the neutral, which is a core difference because SCR 1+2 is coming out of a stance, it's coming out of Scarecrow. So you must take the resulting frames from the moves going into Scarecrow or the moves returning you into Scarecrow into account, because this will change the starter frames of SCR 1+2. But that's pretty much every single move in Scarecrow that you do. On hit, this gives a hard knockdown, and back 3 is pretty much guaranteed. So in most cases, when you get a hard knockdown with Zafina and you go for back 3 will beat out most get up options. There are some options that it won't beat out, but it beat out most. I think in this scenario, from all my testing, back 3 beats out everything. You guys let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, okay? If there's an option that doesn't beat out. And on counter hit, as you see here, it is a counter hit launcher, and the combo damage is pretty nice. This move does have solid Oki pressure because it does hit grounded, and in some cases it will beat out some get up attacks, giving you the potential to get a counter hit launch. Also, this move has really good tracking. If your opponent tries a single step left or single step right, it's a good chance they will get hit by this move. But it is definitely weak to sidewalking left, so if you're good at sidewalking, that's the direction you want to go in. Now, after you press 1+2, if you hold down, it will transition into Tarantula Stance, and you keep the same frame, so it is still +6 on block, and Tarantula 3 comes out in I-14, so this would make it an effective frame trap, because being +6 on block, it turns Tarantula 3 into I-8 with respect to your opponent, so it basically locks your opponent down, and it is safe on block as well. SCR 3+4 does have good frames on hit. On block, it is unsafe at -12. So you're not going to get punished really bad for it, but a knowledgeable opponent will punish you nonetheless. It has good range, or I should say it has legit decent range, so you can use this as a spacing tool. I don't recommend it because if you look at the screen here, you can see this move is actually very linear, so playing an opponent that has good movement, I think this is really dangerous. So one nice thing about this move is that this move is a tail spin, and if you look up Zafina combos online, you're going to see this is probably a primary tail spin coming out of Scarecrow for a lot of her combos. Another really good attribute that synchronizes very well with her power crush move from this stance is that this move also low crushes and tech jumps. So that's really strong because lows beat out power crushes. So if you're using a power crush to keep your opponent off you and your opponent reads your power crush and then they go for a low, this will be a good option to kind of counter your opponent's counter, if that makes any sense. And then remember, he has really good frames on hit, so pretty nice setup there. SCR 4 is a mid-launching I-14 power crush move, and there's quite a few things I want to talk about in reference to this move. The first thing I'm going to get into is the power crush, because this move has some attributes that really make the power crush properties shine out, and I want to talk about that first. A typical power crush for most characters in the game activate around frame 8, and I'm talking about a power crush, I'm not talking about a rage art or a rage drive or anything like that. Typically for most characters it activates at frame 8. Now there are some power crushes that will activate at frame 6. Those are normally dealing with like forward notation or like a special type of power crush like Genghis' other power crush, which is down 3+4. But normally it activates around frame 8, and the activation frames last until about 1 or 2 frames away from impact frame of that move. So the impact frames for this move for Genghis' other power crush that I'm showing you here is 30 frames. So the activation time frame of the power crush is from frame 8 to frame 29. That's a lot of time to absorb damage. A lot of characters have time to hit Genghis before his power crush hits them, return to neutral, and block his power crush, which really sucks for Genghis because that defeats the whole purpose of a power crush. I'm even showing you here for an example of Lay's Razor Rush. Lay has time to land the entire Razor Rush all the way through to the final kick before his power crush can hit him. And yes, even though that kick is a low and lows do beat power crushes, a lot of power crushes in the game will still knock Lay out of his Razor Rush before that kick hits. Now the punches actually come out fairly fast, so in my experience, a lot of power crushes will still eat those punches, but you will still knock them out before the kick actually happens. And that's not Genghis because his power crush impact frames come out at frame 30, and that's not a good thing. As I said earlier, the starter frames for SCR 4 is I-14. So I just realized I've been saying impact frames, so I should try to be more consistent. Starter frames and impact frames do mean the same thing though, but I should definitely try to be consistent. But anyway, my point is, it being I-14 means that the activation frames where you take damage is a lot smaller, and that's a good thing because it gives you more time to A, take less damage, and B, knock your opponent out of the combo or catch them before they can return to neutral and block, right? So that's awesome. That's why I'm saying that the attributes of this move actually makes her power crush shine. And the other attribute that makes her power crush shine is that when you do a power crush, you also want to think about return damage versus the damage you take during the activation frames. Because I have cases where I play people online, and if I do a certain move, they do a power crush because they read the move, and they basically land their power crush, knock me far away, resets to neutral. But the move I did took more damage than their power crush, so I technically won that trade, even though they probably feel like they won the trade. And for Zafina, her SCR 4 is a launcher. It's a full launcher, so she's going to win that trade every single time if she lands the power crush, despite absorbing the damage during the impact frames. Not impact frames, but during the activation frames. The range of this move is fairly decent. I'm resetting practice mode over and over to show you some of the moves that we've talked about and how they will whiff from this position, from this distance apart, and this move will land pretty convincingly, so the range I think is fairly decent. On block, this move is -13. It does return you back to Scarecrow, and in most cases you will probably get launched by a knowledgeable opponent since you can't block in Scarecrow. You can press back after hitting this move, and this will cancel you from returning to Scarecrow and return you to neutral. This will give you different combo paths on hit, but on block it becomes -18, so it is launch punishable on block if you do that. If your opponent blocks this move at tip range, because it has a little bit of pushback and your opponent tries to block punish you, there are cases where they may whiff like I'm showing you here, and if that happens, you can usually whiff punish them and launch them in those specific situations. The move has a little bit of tracking to the left that I've just shown you. To the right, the tracking is not really that good, so you can step this move to the right. It is very linear to sidewalking, so you can sidewalk this move to the left or sidewalk it to the right. It does hit grounded, and this is a decent choice for Oki pressure in some situations because of the speed of this move, and the grounded damage is okay. SCR down 4-4 is one of her better lows from her Scarecrow stance. It might honestly be her best low from her stance in my opinion. It is I-19, so it is barely reactable, probably not reactable at all online. On hit, it is +7, and it also forces crouch, which is always really nice. On counter hit, you get a knockdown for a guaranteed back 3 follow-up, at least I'm pretty sure that's guaranteed. And it high crushes fairly early. This move is -14 on block, rightfully so you will definitely eat a punish for it. More importantly though, there are certain characters in the game that can launch -14 from crouching, so you definitely need to be aware of who you're playing against. The tracking on this move is pretty legit. It's not a homing move, don't get me wrong, but it's still not easy to step this move whether you're stepping in either direction or even trying to sidewalk it. It's not easy. Now this move does hit grounded. That being said, SCR 1+2 and SCR 4 does more damage when they hit grounded, as well as they have faster startups, but you can convert into Mantis if you hold down after pressing SCR down 4-4. So there may be some really cool setups from that, so it could be a viable strategy to use that instead of the other two. And the fact that you can transition into Mantis does seem to add more depth to this move. For example, on block, Jin's while standing I-14 frame launcher whiffs because Mantis has evasive properties, and if you convert into Mantis off of counter hit, it does seem to start a combo, but I haven't been able to find the proper combo path, so maybe it isn't a combo, but either way, I'm curious about this, so if you guys can let me know in the comments if it's a combo for this or not, I'd appreciate it. Okay, the next low we're going to talk about is SCR down 4. Now, one thing about this move is this move has some pretty decent range. I think the range is pretty legit. That being said, this move is I-24, so I do think you will play people who have the skills to react to this move, and this move is -25 on block, so you will probably get launched for it, and as you see there, it's so minus that you can get delayed hop kick launch, so like for max damage. Now on hit, it gives a knockdown and gives some pretty good Oki, which is nice. This move is very susceptible to sidewalking. You can sidewalk it pretty easily to the left or sidewalk it to the right. Now it does hit grounded. That being said, I do believe that there are better moves to hit grounded based on speed and damage, but I have had cases where I knocked somebody away and to the ground, and they basically stayed on the ground to see what I'm going to do, and because this move has good range, I was able to hit them on the ground with this move and make them get up. So that is a valid option there. And by the wall, if you have the skills and pressure and you're freezing your opponent up, there's always chances where this move may land. I don't do this move a lot, honestly. I just think the risk rewards don't balance out. I think it's too dangerous, but that is just my opinion. After down 4, if you press down, you will transition into Mantis, and the frames are the exact same here versus if you don't transition into Mantis. If you choose to use this move as a spacing tool, and say your spacing's off a little bit and you whiff, transition to Mantis is not a bad idea here, because you can see here some moves will whiff on Mantis in certain situations because of Mantis' evasive properties. And if you can't tell already by just looking at it, this move does high crush, so you can go for this move if you're reading it high. SCR down 4-3. This move honestly has some of the worst frames I've ever seen on a single hitting move. It's I-28, so it's a reactable low. On hit, this move is -10s. I repeat, on hit, this move is -10 and it forces crouch, meaning most characters will get a duck punish on hit. And if you're playing against a character like 𝐂𝐈𝐓 who has a while standing 10 frame punish that does a chunky amount of damage on hit, you will get legit punish for this move. Now on block, this move is -23, so you will be launch punished for this move on block. If you're playing against an opponent that has good reaction and execution, they will delay hop kick you on block for maximum damage for the combo. Now the silver lining to this move is a homing move, meaning this move will track you around the globe, so you can't sidestep this move or sidewalk this move, and that's a good thing for how bad the frames are. You can press down after down 4-3 and you will transition into Mantis. Unfortunately, in this case, if you do transition into Mantis, the frames become much worse, and now you're technically launch punishable on hit. So basically transition at your own risk in this case, because honestly, I have shown you moves that will whiff because of Mantis evasive properties in some case, but some moves won't whiff, so you could get launched for this. So make a educated decision. The extension to SCR down 4-3 is down 4-3-3, and this is a natural combo, and you can see here that this is a launcher. So now this move has become a little bit better. Emphasis on a little bit. you now have because essentially you have a low homing launcher now, and I suggest that you use SCR down 4-3-3 for the most part in every situation. I don't truly see a point of picking up the negative frames. And if you use this move for the homing properties, basically meaning you're facing an opponent that's sidewalking or sidestepping a lot, in some cases, for some people, it is harder to react to a move off of a sidestep or a sidewalk versus reacting to the neutral. Despite that, this move is I-28, it is reactable point blank, period. So I do not suggest abusing this move, period. You do see here that you can convert to Mantis, and if you convert to Mantis, you get a different combo path versus if you don't convert to Mantis, but you can combo off this move either way. If you whiff the first hit, the second hit has the same frames on block. This move is still minus 23 on block, so very, very punishable on block. SCR down 3 is a quick low poke that comes out at I-18. Now I-18 is definitely in the realm of unseeable lows. It is minus 3 on hit, so you don't have the advantage on hit. Minus 3 really isn't that bad for an unseeable low, but considering the fact that you return back to Scarecrow and your movement is limited compared to your normal movement, it's something to be aware of. It's minus 6 on block, and on counter hit it's plus 9s. So it's plus 9 on counter hit and forces crouch, and that's very, very good. SCR down 3 has pretty solid tracking. Unless your opponent has some pretty good movement and timing, it will catch your opponent if they step to the left or right, but it is weak to sidewalk left. Okay, get into some extensions for down 3. First extension we're going to talk about is down 3, which is a low string. Now on block, this is minus 8, so not too much worse than minus 6 coming from down 3 single attack by itself, but it is still worse. And on hit, this is not a natural combo. So if you land the first hit, the next hit is not guaranteed, and vice versa kind of for your opponent. If they land the first hit, you can low parry the second hit. That's really good information to know, because a lot of people get caught with both hits. And of course, if you can low parry the second hit off of hit, you can low parry the second hit off of block, because the frames are worse on block. Now, despite being able to low parry this, if you block the first attack, you can't interrupt with an attack or a low crush move or anything like that. And if you try to do that, you will eat the second hit as a counter hit. On hit, this string is plus 8s, so the frames are very good. Plus 8 enforcing crouch, very, very good there. On counter hit, the entire thing is guaranteed. Again, very good, because the string is I-18. And just like down 3, which I believe I said earlier, is weak to sidewalk left, this entire string is also weak to sidewalk left. The last extension is down 3-3, which is a low-high string. Now, first thing we gotta talk about is that there is no mix-up between these two extensions. One's a low ender, the other's a high ender. So you can option select this by simply crouch blocking, and you'll beat out both enders. That's not good, but despite that, this extension, honestly, it isn't half bad. Now, hear me out here. The second hit, if you land on block, is plus 3 on block, and it knocks your opponent a little bit off axis, so that's good. If you land a second hit on normal hit, this is a natural launcher. That's good again. Now, it's not a natural combo. That'd be a little crazy because the low is I-18. So if you land the second hit, you can duck. I'm sorry, if you land the first hit or your opponent lands first hit, you can duck the second hit and launch them for it. On counter hit, it is a natural combo. So you do have a low I-18 natural launcher right here. Unlike before, if you block the first attack, you can interrupt the second attack with a high crush move, whether that's a full crouch move or a while standing move, because the second attack is a high. And you can also reverse or parry the second attack off a block if you're playing a character that has that option. This extension is also a tailspin, so you can use it as a combo filler. And just like down 3 and down 3 extension, it is weak to sidewalk left. So keep that in mind if you're playing an opponent that has good movement, or you just notice them sidewalking to the left a lot. If you press back after pressing down 3-3, you will cancel out of returning to Scarecrow, and you return to your regular normal neutral stance. And remember, you can block in that stance. Also, when you do that, you are no longer plus 3 on block, you are minus 1 on block. So you no longer have the plus frame advantage, but you still, minus 1 isn't bad at all. So you still have good frames for the most part. You can still move around and step and do things like that. SCR 3 is a fast mid poke coming out at I-13. It is plus 5 on hit and minus 6 on block. And if you think about the range that this move has coming out at I-13 compared to a down forward 1, that's actually pretty good. This move has tracking to the left, and it is weak to sidestep right. So kind of like I always say, if you notice your opponent stepping to the right, be aware of the move you're throwing out. You don't want to toss this move out. The extension is SCR D3, and like I always say, if you have a move that has an extension 9 times out of 10, that's going to give you mental plus frames for your previous attack because your opponent don't know if you're going to do that attack or do that attack with the extension. And this is a natural combo, so that both of those are very good. The frames do get worse on hit, unfortunately. It is now +2 on hit, but if you land this on counter hit, the frames get much better. It is +7 on counter hit, and that's really good. Unfortunately, on block, this is -9, so not that good, especially considering the fact that you return back to Scarecrow and you can't block his Scarecrow. If you block the first attack, you don't have the frames to interrupt the second attack with an attack. So be conscious of that, because there are certain strings, I've talked this about before, where you can't interrupt. But you do have the frames if you're playing a character, if you block the first attack, to parry or reverse the next attack. I'm showing examples here with certain characters. There are more characters in the game you can do this with. You still have the option, as I said earlier, about the regular SCR 3 to just step the move to the right and launch your opponent. So if you're playing Zafina, again, if you're playing an opponent that has good movement and you see them stepping to the right, be very cautious of this. The entire string can be sidewalked to the right as well. The entire string is SCR 334, which is a mid-low. And if I'm being honest, I really don't like using the entire string. The low is just too reactable. So unless I'm really causing my opponent to freeze up, I won't use the entire string. But if you land the low, you do get a knockdown and a guaranteed back 3. At least I think it's guaranteed. You guys let me know in the comments if it's guaranteed, but from all my testing, I think it's guaranteed. The entire string is not a natural combo. If it was, it would be awesome and probably broken. But yeah, it's not a natural combo. So if you land the first 2 attacks on hit, which is a natural combo, you can get low parried. The last attack, the low, can be low parried, and the low can be blocked. And it is -25 on block, so you can be launched punished with like a delayed hop kick. So don't finish unless you got your opponent freezed up. On counter hit, the entire string is not guaranteed, but if you do land the second hit on counter hit, the rest of the string, the low, is guaranteed. The last attack in this string is a low, so you can low crush this if you choose to. I prefer to block, but if you do like a hop kick at the end, it will launch, so that is up to you. It is a tech crouch. The low is a tech crouch, so if your opponent blocks and then tries to retaliate with a high off a block, you will beat that block out by crushing it. This will trade with an I-13 frame mid, assuming the mid has a low enough hitbox. So in theory, and I do stress, in theory, you should be able to interrupt this string with an I-12 frame mid. I'm showing you examples. This is Tekken. It is not that simple. This move gets so low to the ground, has such good crush properties that a lot of I-12 frame mids will whiff. And I don't, maybe I shouldn't say a lot, but I play a decent amount of characters, and 4 of my characters have 12 frame mids, and they all whiff. So it feels like a lot to me. I could be wrong. But I'm showing you an example here of 𝐂𝐎𝐍𝐄𝐂𝐓. His 12 frame mid has a low enough hitbox that it does interrupt the string, so it does work. The entire string is weak to sidewalk right, kind of a common theme there. If you press down after the 4, you will transition into Mantis, and a few things change when you transition into Mantis. For one, if you land the 4 on hit and get the knockdown and transition into Mantis, it turns into a combo, so that's really good. And if your opponent blocks and you transition to Mantis, you are no longer -25 on block, you are -14 on block. So you can block most launch attacks from most characters in the game. There are characters that can launch you at I-14, but not every character in the game, whereas before, every character in the game could launch you at -25, so that's really, really good. The final extension of SCR 3 is SCR 343, which is a mid-high string. It is a natural combo, just like SCR 33. On hit, you get a knockdown. Now, where this string tends to shine is the high is +3 on block, and that's nice because it's really good, period. Any move that's plus on block, you get to get some additional pressure, and this kind of causes a mix-up because your opponent may duck because they may not want to deal with the pressure from the high of the plus frames. This does not gel on block, so you can be duck and launch, so be aware of that. And just like SCR 33, if you block the first attack, you don't have enough frames to interrupt the next attack with an attack. In certain situations, you can reverse or parry the second attack off of blocking the first attack. I have to say in certain situations here, guys, because I was not able to do this with Leroy or Asuka. It is possible that I just didn't get the timing down correctly. You guys, please test this out and let me know if you're able to parry or reverse the second attack off of blocking the first attack with Leroy and Asuka, and just let me know in the comments below. Alright, last thing we're going to talk about, and I did split the screen because I want to show you guys that you have another 50-50 mix-up with SCR 3-3. It is not based on attack level, it is based on movement though. SCR 3-3-4, actually just like SCR 2-2, may be a common thing there because they're both fast mid-poke starting strings, are both beatable to sidewalking to the right. But SCR 3-4-3 tracks to the right, so you cannot beat this string out by sidewalking to the right, and that is a mix-up. And you definitely can't beat it out by stepping or sidewalking to the left because SCR 3 tracks to the left. If you do have the skills and the movement and reaction, you can step to the right and launch SCR 3 by itself if you're fast enough before SCR 3-4-3, the second extension, comes out. So you can do that. 1-3 is a good string to use to go into your Scarecrow stance. It is a high string, but this is your I-10 frame punisher, so you're probably going to have a lot of situations where you can use this move as a block punisher to enter Scarecrow with the plus frames. On hit, this is +5. On block, this is -4. Not great on block since you can't, unfortunately, block in Scarecrow, but not bad either. This does jail on block, so if your opponent blocks the first attack, they cannot duck the second attack. You do have the option of doing 1-3 and pressing back afterwards and canceling, so you don't enter Scarecrow, and this does change your frames on hit and on block. So if you do this on hit and press back, it changes from +5 to +1, and if you do this on block, it changes from -4 to -8. Another good move for going into Zafina Scarecrow Stance is her 4-4-3 move, and this is I-20, but because of the 4-4 notation, it'll probably come out in I-22. On hit, this is +9S, so really good frames on hit. It's +9 on hit and forces crouch, so great frames on hit. On counter hit, this is a launcher, so you kind of get in the theme here that this is actually just a really good move in general. And on block, this is +4, so even if your opponent blocks this, going into Scarecrow with +4 frames. Just like 1-3, you can hit back after pressing 4-4-3, and this will cancel you going into Scarecrow, so you'll stay in your neutral stance. Unlike 1-3, all your frames stay the same. So in 1-3, your frames change when you press back on hit and block, not for 4-4-3. And another good thing about that is that if you land this and cancel back on counter hit, you still get a launcher. So really good. Both of these moves complement Zafina's Scarecrow Stance Power Crush pretty effectively based on starter speed, because you have situations where you're going to be playing aggressive opponents and they're going to attack you a lot or try to press you a lot, or other situations where you're playing an opponent that's somewhat knowledgeable about Zafina Scarecrow Stance and they know she can't block. So if they see you do a move and you return to a Scarecrow Stance, they may try to attack you because they're aware it's coming off a block. So usually you have minus frames and they're aware that you can't block in Scarecrow. And these moves are effective for situations like that because 1-3 is -4 on block, and your Power Crush will come out effectively in I-18, and 4-4-3 is +4 on block, and your Power Crush will come out effectively in I-10 relative to your opponent, returning back to neutral, and that's really good. Coming out in 10 frames is actually kind of crazy. And in my experience, Power Crushes are about the average speed of 20 frames, so these are faster than that. And the risk reward ratio again is in your favor because SCR 4 is a launcher, so you'll take some damage but you'll get combo damage in return. So both of these moves are pretty good for setting up your Power Crush against aggressive opponents for those reasons. The next tip is on SCR 3-4-3, the mid-high string that gives you +3 on block. And I just kind of want to show you some examples here because when I first started doing this string, I didn't think some of the moves would be in range to land, and they actually are. Like SCR 2 and SCR 1+2, you're still in range to actually hit your opponent. So if your opponent tries to come in situations like this, you may be able to land the move or a counter hit for both of these moves because SCR 2 and SCR 1+2 are counter hit launchers. Now these are technically not true frame traps because SCR 2 would be coming out in 11 frames and SCR 1+2 would be coming out in 14 frames. So your opponent may be able to interrupt that, but I'm also showing you SCR 4 so that in typical cases, not typical, but in some cases if your opponent tries to interrupt that based on a fast move, SCR 4 is your Power Crush and that will win out. That being said, if you're playing a really good opponent, remember that there's still movement involved, so your opponent may actually be +3 on block, -3 on block from you being +3 on block. They may choose to backdash and cause you to whiff, or sidestep and cause you to whiff. So use these moves accordingly based on reading your opponent. The next move I want to talk about here is SCR 1+2, but before I do that, I do want to say that for everything I said relative to the frames of SCR 3-4-3, that you can apply that to SCR down 3-3 because that is also +3 on block. Now SCR 1+2, we talked about this early in the video, one of her better moves coming out of Scarecrow Stance, I-17 mid, that is +6 on block, so very good frames on block. I want to kind of go over a couple basic frame traps that I do to give you guys some starter setups. So when you land SCR 1+2 on block, one of them I think I already talked about. If you press down, you transition to Tarantula. If you do her 3 out of her Tarantula stance, it comes out I-14, and that is a frame trap. So if your opponent tries to attack you, they will get hit by this. They don't have the frames to attack you and beat that out. Now, if your opponent blocks that in Tarantula, it is -7 on block, but you're so low to the ground, you're basically grounded, that most attacks will just whiff. Okay, like all highs will whiff, most mids, if not all mids, will whiff. So you're not going to eat a big punish from a low poke or something like that. The other frame trap I like to do is down forward 1-4, which is a natural string, it's a natural combo. That comes out at I-13. Her down forward 1 is I-13. So if you land SCR 1+2 on block and you get the +6, that is uninterruptible if your opponent tries to retaliate. And it is +12 on hit. Now it's +12G on hit, I believe, or +12K. I can't remember which, but the point is nothing is guaranteed after that. So even though it's +12, you can't get a follow-up 10 frame punish after that because nothing's guaranteed. If you don't know what I mean by that, please check out my hidden frame mechanics video. The first part of the video goes over basic frame mechanics with a lot of clear and detailed examples. The second part will go over things like nothing's guaranteed or breaking down the 3 levels of power crush and high crush with clear examples. So check that out. It'll make this, well, it should make this much more clear. Another thing you can do, this is not a frame trap, but sometimes I actually do go for a down forward 2 because her down forward 2 is I-16 against an aggressive opponent, and it will trade with, because it's +6, it will trade with a 10 frame move. So if they do a move slower than 10 or 11 frames, I'll win out and get the launch. But if they do a move like a 10 frame move, it'll trade, and in a lot of cases I'll win that trade because it's a launch. So that's another consideration, but she has a lot of moves that you can work with off of +6 on block. Okay, so that's really good. So just want to give you guys a good starter here. Last thing we're going to talk about is her poking pressure from her Scarecrow stance. Honestly, you can deduce pretty much all of this from just going over the guide that I've already shown you, but I do want to refine it a little bit and talk about some synchronization of some moves at a high level. Now, I've said this before and I will say it again, jabs are powerful checking moves in this game, and the fact that she has a 10 frame jab coming out of her stance is just really, really good. Again, I can't think of too many stances that have 10 frame moves coming out of their stance. Now, you can't technically apply this the same way you apply a regular jab for most characters out of the neutral, simply because it's not +1 on block, it's -2 on block, but you probably can throw it out a couple times on block to check your opponent and then maybe switch to something else. This does have all the weaknesses of a jab. I've said this before. It is linear, it is a high, so it can be high crush, it's -2 on block, so your opponent can beat it out with an 11 frame move or faster, or trade with a 12 frame move. But you do need to still mix this in with your poking pressure because it's a fast poke, and it is +9 on hit, which I think is better than most jabs. I think most jabs in the game are +8 on hit, so you get one more collective plus frame, and you can apply that to probably any move you want out of this stance because the plus frames for the jab are so massive. For mid pokes, you should use SCR 2 and or SCR 3. And for coming out of a stance, they're decent mid pokes, all things being considered. They have their pros and cons, very close in frames for a lot of situations. I prefer SCR 3 because I like to try to space my opponents out, and SCR 3 has a little bit more reach and it's better on block, and it has faster starter frames at I-13, where SCR 2 is I-14, the reach is a little bit worse. It has better hit frames, which is really good. And SCR 2 also is a counter hit launcher. So if I actually read my opponent thinking that I can actually set up the counter hit launch, I definitely go for SCR 2 in that situation over SCR 3. They both have follow-up extensions, and both of the follow-up extensions are natural combos, so that's really good. SCR 3 I tend to like more in that area as well because SCR 3 has that little bit of the mix-up with SCR 3-3 with the mid-mid and SCR 3-4-3 with the mid-high, where the high has plus frames, as I just talked about. And if you actually land SCR 3-3 on counter hit, the second hit on counter hit, you can guarantee and get SCR 3-3-4. Now, you can visually kind of confirm SCR 3-3, and because your opponent doubles over when they get hit with the second hit, but at least I can't visually hit confirm the counter hit and land the 4. I either go all the way through, dial in the combo, or I just do SCR 3-3 and I confirm visually the counter hit and that they doubled over, but I can't confirm the 4 from the counter hit. If you guys can do that, again, let me know in the comments. I'm Zafina is a character I've been playing for a little while, but she still has a lot for me to learn as well. Anyway, point being is these are your 2 core mid pokes to use out of her Scarecrow stance. Rounding this out with low pokes, the 2 low pokes that I like to use is SCR down forward 4 and SCR down 3. And these 2 low pokes have a bigger range of differences than SCR 2 and SCR 3 in my opinion. Outside of the starter frames, now SCR down 3 is I-18 and SCR down forward 4 is I-19. So pretty much the same startup, and in most cases, nobody's gonna be able to react to either one of these low pokes. They're just too fast, especially not online. SCR down 3 is -6 on block and -3 on hit, so you give up your frame advantage on hit, but it is safe on block. Where SCR down forward 4 is -14 on block and +7s on hit. So very good frames on hit to keep your pressure going and enforces crouch, but it's unsafe on block. Now you can transition into Mantis as I showed you earlier, and that may cause your opponent to whiff their punish, but that is definitely not guaranteed. And on counter hit, they both have really good options on counter hit, where SCR down 3 on counter hit is +9s, so +9 enforces crouch, and SCR down 4 is a knockdown on counter hit, and I believe you get a guaranteed follow up. As far as tracking goes, SCR down 3 tracks to the opposite sides of SCR 2 and SCR 3, so that's pretty good if you kind of want to use one option over the other to keep your opponent locked down. But SCR down forward 4, that move actually is not homing, but it has really good tracking, and I think your opponent needs to be very, very good at movement to step that move. I've never been able to step it. I'm not the best movement-based player in Tekken, so I'm not saying it's not possible because it's not homing, but it does have very good tracking. And SCR down forward 4 does tech crouch. What usually makes me choose between the 2 is if I want plus frames on hit versus if I want to be safe on block, and or if I want to return to Scarecrow, because SCR down 3 returns to Scarecrow, where SCR down forward 4 you return to your neutral standing state, or you go into Mantis. So if I want to add some trickery or something like that to my pressure, I'll use down forward 4 and transition to Mantis. Well, anyway, that is it. That is the end of my Tekken 7 Zafina Scarecrow guide. If you guys liked it, please like and subscribe. It does help and support my channel a lot. I definitely would appreciate it. This is Acid Light. You guys take care.